Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Ricci, president of New York Small Pharma, and this is an update on what we know about the OCM licensing process, what we're hearing back, and we're also going to be doing a little video on how to fill out your TPI entity and personal disclosure applications. So first, just a little news on New York Small Pharma. We had the honor of helping over 60 C applicants submit their applications to OCM during this first round of licensing. And since then, OCM has released a grant that has allowed organizations such as New York Small Pharma to apply to that grant for funding to do this type of work moving forward in the future. And because we applied for that grant and are waiting to be awarded funds for the grant, we are ineligible to continue as a technical assistant partner at this time with OCM, which means we cannot do one-on-one work with folks. So what we are doing is this video on how to fill out your TPI disclosure application so that we don't leave you hanging, but there are still plenty of organizations that are part of that TAP program, so feel free to reach out to them and they can help you and answer your questions. The advice that we give you here on this video, and as always, is technical assistant advice as we understand it from OCM. We are not lawyers, we are not accountants, this is not legal advice, this is not financial advice, this is technical assistance so that you can get through the process without having necessarily to spend your money at this time. But you will be spending your money, so save it for when you need it. So information that we're hearing from the front lines, some people have already had their application reviewed and given it the thumbs up, and now it's waiting for the next step, which I believe is the CCV has to, of course, adopt all these licenses. People were getting emails to go out and get fingerprinted, and people were getting what they're calling discrepancy emails, and that is where they're listing in the email to you in a letter to the applicant all of the things that need corrections in the application that they did. So if you elected not to submit a continuity form when you did your application, now they will be coming and asking you for that continuity form. So you should have been working on an operational agreement or that continuity form between when you submitted it and now, so that that's ready to go and you can upload it. And so other discrepancies we're hearing, sometimes the OCM is coming and saying that there is a discrepancy in the application and that it needs to be corrected, but we're finding that actually that document was uploaded, that discrepancy didn't exist, it was a clerical error. So just remember, in the same way that we're doing this for the first time, OCM examiners are also doing this for the first time, and everybody's doing their best and working as expeditiously as possible. Remain calm, remain respectful, understand they're making mistakes, we're making mistakes. They're giving us 30 days to correct our application, so also give them some grace and space for their own potential clerical errors. So sometimes you might see something on that discrepancy list that you're like, that document is there, or I filled out that information. Just let them know and continue to work with them in a calm and respectful manner to your benefit. So you'll get that discrepancy letter and they'll tell you to go on and fix those discrepancies, those corrections, and they'll say, ignore the red marks on your application, because when you go into the New York Business Express and you go into your application, you might see a lot of red, like missing LPA, missing this, da-da-da-da, and it could give you a sense of agita, oh my gosh, I have all these problems with it, what's going on? But in reality, sort of look at that as notes for OCM, notes that OCM has left for itself in its process, in its whatever the process is that they go through. As they tell you in your letter, ignore that red. We're hearing that some people are being contacted by, compliance experts and specialists that are saying, oh, this is because you got all that free TAP assistance, you should pay us. We're the only way you're going to get your application order. OCM is here to help you succeed, and their TAP assistant program is here to help you succeed. So just remain calm, follow the steps, and be efficient with your work. Check your mail, check your email, read your stuff, see what it's asking, see what your deadlines are, and move on it. Don't wait to the last minute. So without further ado, I'm going to share some stats that the OCM put out last week in case people missed it. They got 365 cultivator license applications, 537 processor application, 1,320 micro business applications, 350 distributor applications, and 4,303 retail dispensary applications. So the queue of the order of how the OCM will be going through those applications has been released. People might have heard this referred to as the lotto, in the sense that it's a computer that generates how that list is ordered. And so if the computer spit you out to the top of the list, you're in a really good place. If the computer spit you out at the end of the list, you're in a less favorable position. However, don't count yourself out, because they're still going through that list and people are falling off that list for whatever reason. And you might move up. So don't lose heart. They've announced that they're handing out 250 retail licenses in this round and 110 licenses for microbusiness in this round as well. So they've only released that queue for retail and microbusiness. And if you recall, if you applied by November 17th with a location, then you're considered non-provisional. And so the list that they've released for micro and retail is that non-provisional list. If you applied without a location or after November 17th, then you're on the provisional list and it has not yet been released. So if you don't find your name on this list and you either applied after the 17th or without a location even before the 17th, you're still going to be on that provisional list. So it would make sense that you're not on this one. So don't panic. And what they're going to be doing is releasing 250 retail provisional, 250 retail non-provisional, 110 microbusiness provisional, and 110 microbusiness non-provisional. So if you're number 251 on the retail list, then you might still have a chance, because people might be falling off that list. If you're number 2,251, you're in a tougher spot, but don't lose heart. So I mentioned earlier in this video that some people are getting the email to go out and get fingerprinting. They also mentioned on the webinar, there's no reason to wait for that email in order to go get fingerprinting. And you can go to the OCM website to get this PDF document, but this is all that you need to know. As you can see, this is your website that you need to go to set up your fingerprinting appointment. And I'll just do that for you now so you can see it. Basically, what you do is you go to this website, it says enter code, and the code that you need to enter is 158BHS. That is the code that you enter. I did this earlier today. It's not that hard. You enter this 158BHS code, and then it asks you, then you come down here and you schedule or manage your appointment, and you go through and you follow the steps. Eventually, you will get to a place. They ask you for your name, your address, other information. It's all very simple to answer. Eventually, they ask you for your agency ID, and your agency ID is the first 7 letters of your application number. So if you're retail, that's OCM RETL. If you're micro, that's OCM MICR. And then the last 4 digits of your ID, of that application ID. So it would be without any spaces. So you don't need the 2023 or the multiple zeros. So it would be like, if you're a micro, it would be OCM MICR 0493. If that's your number. If that's your number, I just picked a number out of my head. So, and that's your agency number, and that's basically all you need to do. You set up an appointment, you go in, you get fingerprinted, and then you send in your fingerprints. It's going to cost you about $102. There might be cheaper ways to get this done. You could probably get fingerprinted elsewhere. You could mail it in to the address on the form, but the simplest way is to go to this URL and to make an appointment. So that's fingerprinting. And also wanted to let you know that there is the good people at the Office of Cannabis Management set up a TPI hub to answer all of your TPI questions. We're going to go over a TPI application. But in this TPI hub, it is everything you could possibly dream of wanting to know about TPI. There is an overview of TPI. There's a TPI portal for individuals, a TPI portal for entities, the TPI portal for applicants, the instructions, frequently asked questions, and anything you need to know about TPI. You can also go to the Office of Cannabis Management, and under licensing, you can also get to all of this information as well. So if you type in Office of Cannabis Management and you haven't clicked licensing, you just go to adult use, then click on licensing, and you'll come to this page. Here's where you can view that queue of micro business applications and retail applications that have been listed in order that they will be going through them. for this round. That's where you can see that and find your place on the queue. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this page, this is like the mecca of application. In this field of blue-green squares, you can find all the information that you need to know. And right here is your TPI portal instructions and TPI frequently asked questions, among other TPI information. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through the TPI application. So when you applied for your micro or retail or whatever license it is that you applied to, you immediately got an email back from the office telling you that they received your application. And at the same time, you also got an email that says, you or an entity that you represent has been listed as a true party of interest in the license application. And in that email, they will give you your PIN code, and they will also give you a link to your TPI application. You cannot forward this link to someone else and have it work. Each link is specific to the individual, so you need to click on the link that you got. If you can't find that email and you can't access the portal through the TPI hub, you can contact OCM at AU Licensing at ocm.ny.gov or licensing at ocm.ny.gov, or you can call them, and the number to call them is 888-626-5151, and let them know that you don't have this email and you need the link. So when you click on that link, it'll take you to a spot on New York Business Express. You put in your log on credentials, and you log into New York Business Express, and then you get into the TPI disclosure application. The front page gives you information about TPI, the same thing we saw in the application. Then you go into the basic information. This will be pre-populated for you. It'll have your entity name, whether you're doing DBA or not in the state of New York. If you have a yes for that, it'll ask for further information. It'll have your tax ID number, your address, and all of your contact information already filled out. Just go through it, make sure that everything is correct. Then that it's filled in, that all the red asterisks are filled in, and it'll ask you to describe the business conducted by the entity, as well as describe the interest that the entity holds in each applicant the entity is a TPI of. So in the business, you want to describe that if you're retail, you're going to be doing everything that is legally allowed for retail in the state of New York, and the same for micro. So that you will be cultivating, processing, packaging, distributing, selling cannabis, potentially holding events, if licensed, and that the entity is who the entity is owned by, what the current percent TPI that person has within that entity, and whether you hold any interest in any other license. If you have interest in any other license, it would be good to report it at that time. And then you're going to save and continue and keep on keeping on. And then it has what type of entity you signed up with already pre-populated, an LLC in most people's cases. And then for the longest time, it says, is this entity approved and registered to do business in New York? And it said no, and you couldn't change it. But it seems like they've updated that and made it a yes. So the first thing it asks for is the certificate of status. So it also asks for this in your regular application, is asking for it again here. And just to let everyone know what the certificate of status looks like, it's the document that you would have gotten from the state had you requested it. It's usually called short. It has the word short in it in the title. So when you register for your LLC, the Department of State sent you an email with all of the information on your registration. That also had the link for your EIN in it. And if you had selected this document, it would have attached it at that time. So you could go back into that email and find it. It would have come from noreply@dos.ny.gov. And you're going to want to look for the one that has short in the title, and it is your certificate of status. And you'll know that it's your certificate of status because it says certificate of status. If you do not have a certificate of status, if you didn't put this in your original application or you never applied for it, you do need to go out and send away for it. And so that's what you're going to be uploading here. It has the blue ink and it'll say certificate of status on it. So you just want to make sure that you put the right one in that download. Then you just read the questions and answer. Has the entity entered into an agreement, contract, merger, consolidation, or financial agreement with any other state of New York cannabis-related business? For most of us, that's a no. If it's a yes for you, you are going to want to click yes, and then you're going to want to add the information of what is that other business that you've entered into an agreement or contract with. At this point, they also asks for you to upload your operating agreement, your bylaws, or your partnership agreement, your charter, your articles of incorporation or organization, or any other documents you'd like to include. So most articles of organization or incorporation are also considered the charter. Bylaws are also considered a charter. Bylaws can also be considered an operating agreement. So you don't necessarily have to have four uploads here. You might just have your articles of organization and an operating agreement. So if you have not filled out that continuity agreement or the dissolution clause that they ask for in the application, this is the place to include it. So you would embed it. The reason why I sort of didn't put it in my application and didn't encourage others necessarily to upload it in theirs was because that's typically something that you embed within your operating agreement. So at this time, you would upload that operating agreement, make sure you have your continuity and dissolution clause in it. And of course, your articles of incorporation. Then the next set of questions is regarding your entity business structure. Was it known by any other names? Does it have any parent companies or subsidiaries, affiliates, or predecessors? And has it engaged in any sales, mergers, or consolidations within the last 3 years? For most of us who just set up our entity, these are all going to be no. For some of you, it might be a yes. Maybe you had an edibles or a baking company for the last 3 years and you were selling candies or baked goods, and now you would like to get a license to have infused baked goods, but you have under your entity name made sales over the last 3 years. So you can upload documents here. You can upload your taxes from the last 3 years. If you have QuickBooks, you can upload your summaries for the last 3 years. If you've been audited, you can upload your audit just to let them know what are the sales that you've engaged in, how much sales have you done, and just to make sure that you are following good accounting. Then it comes to true parties of interest, direct ownership. For most of us, that is us. So you're going to click on add missing info and go through and populate this square, and you can pick as many names as you want to describe your role. And then in the percentages, for most of us, it's just us at this point still. We don't have partners, we don't have investors, so it's going to be 100, 100, 100 across the board. And then will this person continue in the current role? For most of us, that's going to be a yes. Will they take part in the operation in the day-to-day of the business? For most of us, that is also going to be a yes. And so please explain your activity and the hours this person will devote to the business. What they want to hear here is that I, so-and-so as owner operator of this entity will be engaged in all of the major decisions. We'll have, sole ownership, sole authority in decision-making, sole authority or major role in decision making, major role in financial decision. They want to make sure that no one else is controlling the decisions of your organization or the finances of your organization. And so that's the type of information that you're going to include there. Then you save and continue. And so you click save, it saves that box, and then you save and continue on to, oh wait, I should say, this tiny little square here, you're going to be filling out 100, 100, but you fill out this little square here to say that everything that you've attested to is correct and that you do, in fact, have 100% ownership. If you do, if not, if you don't have 100% ownership, then you have to fill in what percent that you do have. Of course, realizing that as a C applicant, you must have 51% ownership or more to qualify. And so then the next set of questions is indirect ownership. Most of us don't have any indirect owners. It's just us ourselves. And so we don't have anything to put in here. But if you do have indirect owner, with more than 5% proportional aggregate current or future ownership in a publicly traded, or 10% proportional aggregate current or future ownership in privately held entity, those individuals would be listed here. For most of us, we don't have those things. And if you've listed a chairman, a board member, director, or trustee on your cap table or other information from your TPI section of your application, they will already be populated here. Otherwise, this is just, we haven't filled out yet the management structure of our organizations. That is also something that is typically included in an operating agreement if you've uploaded that. And if you have any questions or guidance or need further guidance in this area, they provide this link here, which will link you to that TPI hub that I showed you earlier, and you can have all of your questions answered at that TPI hub. Otherwise, you just keep on keeping on. And then, do you have any additional true parties of interest to list? And they tell you who those true parties are, who they might be. If you have additional investors or true parties of interest in your organization, this is where you would add them at this time. And they can either be businesses and entities that have an interest in your entity, or individuals that have an interest in your entity. And you would then list them here. The entity ones go in the first section, and the individuals go in the second. And then you click on this box that say, I attest that everything that I'm saying is in fact true. And then here they're asking if you have any proposed or executed agreements. There's been a lot of discrepancy here on what this actually means and stands for. People will see property lease agreement and they're like, oh, that's, I have to upload my lease. But if you recall, you already uploaded your lease in your application. And really what it's asking here is if you have a property or lease that would qualify as a TPI. So if you, as an applicant, are leasing to another applicant, then you might include that in this section. But just your lease that you have for your property does not necessarily go in this section. As we understand it from reading the documents that OCM put out for instructions, and as we review and read this. So you save and continue that, and then they want to know your entity finances. If you have any debt, holders of debt, they would be included here. Otherwise, they want to know who your financial institutions are. For most of us, we don't have a financial institution. We have not yet gotten a bank account for our entity or determined what bank we want to use. Cannabis isn't easy to find banking, so you can leave that blank. Do you have any stock in your companies? Some people have, allocated, shares of equity, shares of stock in their companies, and then they can put that in here. Most of us have not done that at that time, so these were all going to say blank. So here they want to know if you have any litigation or violation. Was the entity or any parent company or predecessor party existing to post litigation? Did it have bankruptcy? So if you're a brand new entity, chances are all of your answers to these questions are going to be no. Just read them, take your time, look through them. But remember, you're not answering for you, whether you've declared bankruptcy, you're answering for your entity, whether your entity has declared bankruptcy. And then in the next round, you will be answering for you. So you save and continue. Cannabis license history. They want to know if you have held any direct or indirect interest in past licenses. Do you have any in another state? Are you, this is part of the two-tier system, are you cultivating? Do you hold a license in another state? Do you hold a retail in another state? They want to know those things here. For most of us, it's going to be a no, because we're brand spanking new and are from New York, kind of waited our opportunity and we created our entity for this event. And so it's going to be all no for most people. Read it and just answer according to you. And then you put your initials in to make sure that you are verifying this information and that they have, and that you're actually granting them permission to confirm this information as accurate. So they can go to other states to see if you in fact do or do not hold a license. So these are some conflict of interest questions. Just read them. If they don't apply to you, the answers are no. And then again, they're asking for agreements and contracts. Do you have goods and service agreements that can fall into the following categories? General goods and services, landlords. So like if you're exchanging your rent for interest in your company or for profit sharing, then those are the types of agreements that they're looking. They're not just wanting to know if you're leasing your property or you're leasing your land or your retail. This is like whether there's a financial exchange for these things. That's what they're asking here. And for, again, most of us, this goods and services contract is going to be no. There is an entire section in that licensing at the bottom on TPI goods and services, also in the TPI hub, portal hub, or whatever it's called. You can find the information there. Again, for most of us, this is going to be no. Make sure that you're reading it. Make sure that you're applying for your entity and specific to you. And now you have your financial disclosure page. So again, you're not answering for you. You're answering for your entity. So they ask, what is your cash on hand and what is the source of funds? So you have to answer these questions in order to advance. And so you might say, I have no cash on hand, or I'm not ready to disclose my cash on hand, or I myself have cash on hand, me personally, but the entity does not have cash on hand at this time. And so you would select the source of funds, you would select where the source of funds are coming from, and then you would enter the amount. So if it's zero, then you just put zero in. And then if you actually have a source of cash funds and an agreement, you would upload that here and you would put that amount in. Otherwise, it would be zero and you would click save. But if you don't go through and do that and put that zero in, it won't let you advance. So be sure that you do that. It wants to know if you have any borrowed money. And again, if you don't have any borrowed money, you can just leave this as zero. That blank. And then expenses. So this, what you could put in this section, and it will not let you advance if you don't put anything in. So you would select if these are actual or anticipated expenses, you would fill out all the information accordingly. And then you would upload the file. A file could be a receipt of that expense. And so actual expenses could be, $500 for your application, or $200+ for your LLC formation. Or did you have to pay to, did you pay to get your certificate of status, your $25 receipt for that? Did you pay a rush order, whatever you paid for that? Did you pay to get some of your C documentation? You can include that in there, or any other expenses that you might have had to this time. You can include that in this, or you can leave this as a blank. You're not required to have to include that information at this time, but it is a good idea to keep a running spreadsheet of what you have spent on this to date. So you would put in zero for those expenses, click yes, and then they also want to know what your total investment is. So your total investment can be zero. It doesn't actually have to be a number. It could be just the $500 that you paid for the application, and then you save and continue. So so the next section is on entity tax clearance. Read through it. I'm not going to take up time in the video to read it to you, but basically they want to know the name and the title of the person filling it out, and have you fill in the initials, which allows them to pull information on the tax. And there is, when you form your entity, you will get a letter from the Department of Taxation that is an LLC information form. It says fill out within 15 days. Almost no one, very few people actually make that 15-day deadline or even know to look for that document. Make sure you look for it in your mail and fill it out as soon as you can and send it in. It's to help you get your state tax ID number, and then eventually you will have to file for a number to be able to sell goods in the state of New York, so that you have a tax number. And that can be costly. It can cost you up to $600. So you don't have to fill that out right away. It does take some time to get it. Some people will tell you, oh, you should have done that immediately. To each their own. To me, it's not something that you need immediately, but you do eventually need it. And it's not an expense that I would undertake without actually being awarded a license myself. So I don't fill out that form, or I will not fill out that form until after I'm actually awarded the license. But by filling out this information and putting in your initials, you're allowing the Department of Taxation to share confidential information with OCM for the purposes of your license, and to be able to conduct business with that license. And then this is just your entity attestation. Just like on your application, you had to click an attestation, basically saying that you have filled everything out to the best of your knowledge, and that it's all been truthful. And so you put your name, your title, all of your initials, save and continue. And then just like in your application, you get this giant summary of all the information that you just filled out. And at the bottom of it is your button to actually submit. So don't submit unless you're ready to submit. Don't submit and then contact OCM and be like, oh, I forgot to do this. I need to amend it. So take your time, do it expeditiously. Like, don't wait, get this stuff in, especially if you are well placed on that list. Don't hesitate. But also don't send it off unless you know for sure that everything that you have done is in this application. And you're just like your application, it will save your place when you resume. It'll take you right back to where you left off, which was in our video was this disclosure summary, which is exactly where we left off. But you can log out and come back to this at any time and submit it when you're ready. After you send this out, what you're going to get back is a disclosure form for the individual disclosure application. So that's the next step. So fill this one out, get it in, do your operating agreements, make sure that if you did not do your dissolution or continuity agreement, that you're including those in your operating agreements now, and sign up, get your fingerprinting appointment ready to go, and so that you can move quickly through the process. Hopefully that was helpful to you guys. If we can't answer your questions, I want to say if you have questions, let us know. But we're sort of on a gag order until we find out whether we're awarded these funds, and then we can hopefully resume our work of helping the community. But until then, I hope these videos are helpful. We thank you guys for watching this video and sticking with us, and we cannot wait to see some of our people that we've already helped have already gotten through and are just waiting for the next steps, which we believe is the CCB adoption, the CCB review and eventual adoption of these licenses. But we'll keep you posted as we learn more. Luckily, we have friends and colleagues that are ahead of us on the list and that are giving us info about the process and where things stand. And good luck to all of to everyone that we helped. And thanks again for tuning in. Bless everyone. Wishing everyone a beautiful 2024, and great things are happening. So much love to everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great, beautiful day. Until next time.